Welcome to Scene, where the art world meets the real world. Every 2 weeks, we sit down with emerging and established artists to offer a genuine glimpse into their lives and minds, all in an authentic and totally straightforward manner. I'm Carrie Scott, your host. And with 2 decades of experience as a curator and art historian, I firmly believe in the transformative power of art, if it's seen. I first met Misan Harriman at a party, and he took my picture, and I thought it was great. Within a year, he was shooting the most important images that came out of the George Floyd protests and Black Lives Matter protests, and has spent the last 5 years documenting every civil rights movement, every single protest that's happened, not only here in the UK, but abroad. So it should have come as no surprise to me that sitting with him was going to be a thing, and it was. Misan's himself got as much presence as his work does. He knows what he's trying to do. He knows the message that he's trying to capture, and he's doing it perfectly. I mean that, and I know it sounds gushy, but he is. And he's about to have a show here at Hope 93, where he will show for the very first time the bulk of this work, the last 5 years. And I think it's going to be epic. You don't want to miss this one. It was a great conversation, and Misan is an artist that you need to know about. So, violence, the clapper.
It's the beginning of great things.
Okay, listen. It's safe to assume that most people know who you are, I think. Giant social media following. Giant presence. Giant person. But how do you describe kind of what you do? Are you a portraitist? Are you a photojournalist? Are you an activist? Are you just an artist?
I am someone that is always chasing that lady called light. She's elusive, but she shows what truth is. And once in a while she gazes upon us, and I'm there to capture the human condition. And that can be in my photography and also in my filmmaking. But I use, between the highlights and the shadows is truth itself. And that's what I try to do.
I knew this was going to be tough. But the fact that you just opened with poetry and I'm done.
That's not poetry, though.
It was.
Okay.
It was.
It's dyslexic talk.
It's beautiful, whatever it is. Okay. So light. We're searching for light. What, though? Well, because you've now answered it, but you made this kind of what to some people feels like a giant transition.
Yeah.
From celebrity, from portraiture, to an urgent agenda, for lack of a better word. What cracked that open?
Well, I mean, and many people will see this in the film that's coming out, but, my life was changed. I don't know how old I was, 10, 11, and I saw this portrait by Manita Sleet Jr. of Carrie Scott King at the funeral of her husband. And I remember seeing this woman that somehow looked graceful in the most awful day. And she had her baby girl just here, Bernice, looking up at her. And I remember that's when I realized that photography wasn't birthdays and holidays. It was something else. And that stayed with me. And I find it extraordinary that the person that changed my life in photography is actually her son, because it was Martin Luther King III that shared one of my images. And then all my images went viral during the summer of 2020. And then Vogue saw my work and made me the first Black man. And it took 104 years to shoot the cover of British Vogue. So, the seeds were planted a long time ago by the American civil rights movement itself. And then my imagery was amplified by MRK3. So I've always been doing that work in terms of photography. When I first got a camera just 7 years ago as a birthday present from my wife, this neurodiverse, insecure little boy in a man's body had a woman fall in love and with all the parts of himself that he was ashamed of. And that sense of you matter, go forth. I started shooting. And the protest movement happened at the same time as I realized that I could have a point of view.
I've run to your defense before, because we met pre-2020.
Yeah.
We met like 2019. And people have said, isn't he just a celebrity photographer who like now shoots on the street?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, do you know what? When I met him, he wasn't sure what he was.
No, I just started when I took a lovely portrait of you and your husband, and I had been shooting for less than a year. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Just figuring it out, and I learned how to take pictures on YouTube tutorials. I didn't go to any fancy school. But, that Robert Frank quote I use so much, the eye should learn to listen before it looks. I think my whole life I've been obsessed with film and imagery. I was giving talks as a 9-year-old about Kubrick's Barry Lyndon, which is a living piece of, it's a painting that just happens to be a film. So I think my compositional ability and an understanding of that lady called light had been there for a long time. I just didn't have the self-belief or self-love to hold this seemingly inanimate object and recognize that it was always going to tell me who I was supposed to be.
But how is someone who just started, like, how are you so sure? And I mean that, like, I imagine you out in the street shooting these, not being terrified. But I imagine it is terrifying. And I imagine being in this position now is slightly terrifying, but maybe it's not.
Well, if you were to tell me when I was taking your picture that, 6 years down the line, I would be chairman of the South Bank Center, I would be an Oscar-nominated filmmaker, I would have my images, in the National Portrait Gallery's permanent collection, I would have thought you were bonkers, right? But what's happened is sometimes the road less traveled is your inner voice telling you, this is who you are. And I struggle with crowds, strangely. I get very panicky around large crowds. But when I hold this camera and I look through the viewfinder, everything just distills into looking for humanity. And as a black man, when George Floyd was killed and I saw someone that looked like me lying in his own piss, still calling the officers sir, as his life was distinguished, I had run out of tears. I didn't have any more tears left. And I asked my wife, what do I do? And she was like, look to your friend in the camera. And I went to the streets of London not knowing what I would see, and captured, one of the biggest civil rights movements, at least of our lifetime, in the only way that I knew how to, which is probably quite cinematically. I use big lenses, I shoot in very specific sort of cameras, and the world, the internet, had a very strong response to it, and no one can predict that.
Especially when protest photography has been ignored.
Mm.
I'm thinking of Larry Fink.
Mm-hmm.
His March on Washington photographs, for me, are my...
Yeah, of course.
I remember seeing those as a kid and thinking, I need to understand this history. What am I looking at? But the art world has not said, these matter. Price points reflect that, especially for Larry and Gordon Parks.
Yeah.
And we can go on. So how did you know to keep going?
Because the importance of the work, I think, wasn't about entertainment. It wasn't about having intellectual people from the film and art world tell me what they think the value is. I fucking know what the value is, right? When you are seeing the blueprint of the kind of world that both you and I's kids could inherit, when you're seeing that, no one needs to tell me that's important. It's a primary... I've shot everyone at this point in terms of famous people. None of that comes near me, seeing a grandmother, survivor of the Holocaust, look me in the eye and say, with a Zimmer frame, telling me I'm here because I know we can be better. and I have the honor of capturing her humanity. And someone's going to tell me that's unimportant or that doesn't have any value. That would be a damning testament to the extractive consumerism that has entered the art world. Let's bring real humanity back into it through images that reflect the best of who we can be. I don't think that's a complicated thing.
No, but it can be. How do you decide what you shoot? Do you have to agree with what's being protested?
No, I've shot people that have spat in my face. I have shot people that don't see me as a human being. I have, I go and I don't ever plan. I'm by myself with my backpack, no assistance, no lighting aids, just my cameras and I walk. And the streets do the talking and my lens does the listening. And that's how it works every single time.
At some point, though, that's not going to be possible. I mean, you've got 250,000 followers on Instagram. I mean, I have 30,000. I walk around an art fair and I get talked to. At some point, your success and the thing that you're fighting for, right, feels that these images have agency and presence, and it's going to stop you doing what you do, surely.
No, most photographers that already have my profile don't realize that, this is the work. This is the work. Yeah, people stop me in protest. They ask for selfies, but I'm still shooting. No one's going to stop me from shooting. Fuck that. This is what I do. It's my oxygen, so I go to protests. I've been shooting in Johannesburg recently, Minnesota. I go to, I don't have to, I could be in Cannes or, shooting the netball or something. But that doesn't feel particularly important to me right now for obvious reasons.
If you get called up to shoot the Met, do you think, no thanks, I don't want to do that?
I wouldn't shoot the Met, no. If I did, I would recognize that it is today's Hunger Games, and I would shoot it in that manner. How we could do this when children in Congo and Sudan are perishing in the way that they are. No. The Met should have used that amazing power it has to recognize that the world's hurting. No one's trying to reduce the great spectacle of fashion, but let it have some kind of moral voice and clarity. My heroes like Bill Cunningham always had a moral clarity, always understood why he loved to observe and empower women. We're being reduced into something that I don't recognize anymore. So if I was going to shoot it, it would be an interesting observation, but I doubt I would do it just for the sake of celebrity. There's no need.
You sat there saying that, and I thought, this man really is not scared of anything. Like, you're not, you just said something that most people won't say to Anna Wintour.
Why wouldn't they?
Because people don't. You know this.
No. It's, for me, I have to recognize that Black culture is so valuable and it can't be wrapped around anything that is hyper-commercial just for the sake of hyper-commercialism. It has to be more than that. I'm Nigerian. I grew up with Fela Kuti. He had a voice, and his voice wasn't serving brands. It was trying to emancipate the suffering of the colonial heritage of his people. That should matter.
It does. It does. I knew I needed my notes because you were going to take me every which way. Someone called you a conscience for the camera. And I thought that was really reductive, or it missed some of the nuance. And it's a beautiful thing to say. But when you hear that, what do you think? Do you think that accurately describes?
I think a conscience, I'm not good at looking away from things. And maybe that means that I have a conscience, right? So my lens, Grenfell, for example, it's one of the great wounds of this country. It's going to be 8 years very soon. I've been there every single year. And as each year as I go and see the community in the anniversary, I see less politicians, I see less celebrities, I see less photographers. Even the Reuters and Getty guys don't turn up anymore. And I'm standing there with the elders, with the youth, with people that lost many family members, with firemen that have severe PTSD because of what they saw on that day. And I'm like, why is no one else bearing witness? Why is no one else making sure that the impunity of the crime of Grenfell is never forgotten? So if that's that I have a conscience, I think it's sad, because it shouldn't be a rarity. You know, for me, it's the basics. You know, when people say, "Oh, what do you care about?" I'm like, the basics. I believe that Mother Nature is weeping. I believe children should always be protected, regardless of what religion or race that they are. I believe that women should be always in charge of their own self-determination and bodies. I believe that you should love whoever you love. I believe if your body was your prisoner, then you should find a way to be who you are supposed to be and love who you're supposed to love. And of course, that race and racism and the heritage of imperialism and colonialism are real things, not fictions of my imagination. Those are the basics, and I don't think that's a radical thing for my lens to point at.
But do you think your lens can make those things so?
I think my lens can have a conversation with a stranger that is soft, that isn't judging them, that isn't finger pointing. That maybe if you don't know a trans person, you can begin to say, "Oh, actually, let me understand what it means to be trans," and go on a journey of unlearning and decolonizing many of the viewpoints that the social programming of the worlds that we exist in have forced us to have. You know, confirmation bias is the mother of arrested development, and arrested development is the father of rage. And algorithms are keeping us on islands of rage where we hate what we don't know. And my work is here to build bridges. And hopefully, between the highlights and the shadows, there is enough truth that can make you take a journey of unlearning.
Aren't you mad?
No, I'm not. I'm someone that goes on walks with my crazy dog and has snuggles with my two little girls and recognizes all the joyful moments that I have the privilege to experience in this life that I have. And I feel privileged to be able to help others through art, through my voice. And rage doesn't help that. You know, I'm a child of some traumatic experiences as well. And if you've gone through that and worked on yourself, you understand what rage is. And that isn't my weapon. My weapon, similar to Gordon Parks, my sword and shield will be the lens.
What do you think sets these apart? So there's a man in this picture who's he's taking a photograph as well. Mm-hmm. And you're far away, so who knows if he's taking a picture of you taking a picture. Mm-hmm. But I love that. But what in this moment where everyone's a photographer, what was it about your images that grabbed everybody and still does?
You can't defend yourself against some of my observations, you know. There have been times where people have been brought to tears looking at my images. You know, my images aren't there for you to look, move on, and that was a nice evening with some good finger food. They find the parts of yourself that you're hiding from. Because my photography is born from the place that I was hiding from. And I know that. So I know when I have a moment, always have done. In my first film, I didn't need many takes. I knew when I had the shot. I just know that. And that was an observation on grief. And I know you've watched that. So it's just there. I don't know where it came from. I'm not sure you can teach this. But, you know, with this image, it's amazing how you can be in Trafalgar Square. I don't know, maybe there were thousands of people that day, but this to me feels intimate. And the conversation with the subject feels small, but important. And maybe that's how people react to my work.
You just said you were hiding from something. What were you hiding from?
Myself. You know, I think the thing about imposter syndrome is that and my anxiety, I live with quite a lot of anxiety in general, and it's fight or flight a lot. So I think I don't deserve a lot of things that have come my way consistently. And it can be fuel for creating great art, but it's not something that goes away. So there are parts of myself that I recognize I still try and hide from the world. But I think when I hold the camera, it is that part that sees humanity for what it could be and should be. And that's when I press the shutter.
Does it feel like this big, giant, important, scary, like, is there weight? Part of me is sitting there listening to you being like, why isn't he a politician? Can you please go and run the country?
That would be like taking a dirty bath. And I have had many, lobbyists and all sorts say, you're really interesting because you know, the data points are great. You know, like liberal, center left people really love you. Far left people really love you. But center right people don't hate you too much. And you can take them on a journey. We could do a lot with you. And I'm like, no, my life is art. You know, it's my pictures, it's my filmmaking, it's my voice. And, you know, I'm ambassador for Save the Children. I do a lot of work there. It's also important to me. I work a lot with Choose Love. And of course, there is, the South Bank Centre, 11 acres of cultural promise and hope in the wonderful convening space that we have in this great nation. So that's what I'm going to focus on. And it doesn't feel heavy at all. I think it would feel heavy if I wasn't able to help and create. That's when I'm not good at being silent.
No. How do you deal with the heavy stuff though? Like you do shoot. I mean, this image isn't particularly weighted in terms of the grief that you capture in some of your other images that do hit. You can feel the emotion. How do you metabolize?
Well, some of it is like shooting my own trauma, you know? So especially with anti-racism, there are people where their eyes are my eyes, and there are tears falling whilst I shoot.
Do you talk to them?
Very rarely. Some of them recognize me now, which sometimes makes things tricky. But in general, I like telephoto lenses because I can be away. But also with the great signs and placards, you know, they want to be photographed. And it gets heavy usually when I'm looking through, you know, the edit. 2 a.m., 3 a.m. There's been a lot of weeping, a lot of wailing. There's an image I took recently of a rabbi and an imam, and you know, the world has told us that these two people are supposed to hate themselves, you know, and they're holding a sign begging for peace. And I was just like, Christ, you know, it's then when you see it, and those people don't know me, I don't know them, but my God, they're trying. They're trying, and our politicians and our news media are telling us that they're not trying. And my work is saying they are trying, and I have proof that they're trying. Right? And that's the work. That's the work. Like if you want to do what I do, you need to be at the tip of the spear of, you know, human beings figuring out the wrongs of this world on their streets, and trying to do better by it. And sometimes it's the opposite. You do get, you know, I've shot far right protests where it's, you know, sort of drunk lads, you know, peeing on monuments, right? And it's a very sad testament to that movement, but I'll still observe it with my lens, of course.
You mentioned confirmation bias, and I feel like I'm sat here being like, I just am desperate. It is. It's like I thank God you exist. Like you're exactly, and I think that is some of the reason that your images do resonate, and that over the last 5 years, because you haven't just documented the things that you agree with, that you've gone to places that are dark for you, that it gives us that thing that we just don't have at the moment, which is balance.
Yeah.
Right. And as you say, we've all been in these echo chambers for so long, listening to each other have the same opinions. And
I can't blame people for having views that I don't agree with half the time. Many of them are actually quite valid views. You know, if you're seaside town has lost business or its tourism is gone because, EasyJet flights and Ryanair flights are cheaper to go somewhere warmer, or if your mining town has lost industry to other countries, right? And somebody's telling you that it is a trans woman that is the reason for that, or it is a brown person that's coming on small boats, and that person speaks like he went to the sort of schools that I went to, and he looks the part, and he's filling you with rage. I understand why you can eat that up. The difference between what the news and the internet is doing and my human algorithm is that I can show pictures that prove the otherwise and prove that most people are actually quite well-meaning. I remember I took over Piccadilly Circus when everything went completely nuts for me at the beginning. Ocean Outdoor did this amazing thing, and I had all my images and the lights, Piccadilly Circus, and I went, I don't know, very early because I knew people would recognize me. So I went there and I wanted to have a moment by myself. Now, I'll never forget this redhead young woman was staring at me. I'm like, what's she doing here now? And she walks up to me and she goes, I love your pictures. We came down from Scotland, I believe. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I said, you're alone? And she goes, no, my dad's here. I was like, okay, great. And he's really racist. And I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, he's just over there. And he walks up to me, this big old boy, and he says, I love your pictures, mate. And I was like, thank you, sir. And he goes, I just didn't know. I grew up in a little town and my dad didn't know anyone that looked like you. And I was told that you guys, were a certain way. And that's why I told my daughter. But he goes, this little girl here, she refused to hate. She refused to say, Dad, come down. Come and see these people. And, I'm sitting there, tears going down my eyes. And then I have a hug with him again. And I was like, God, this picture thing does talk to people.
This picture?
Yeah, it does talk to people in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're stupid or small. And that beyond, listen, let the fine art world do what it does with me. But beyond anything, these images are going to hold people's hands and saying, walk with me, and let's see whether we can figure this thing out. And that's the work. Everything else is stuff I cannot control, but I know what I'm capturing. And I know when my two little girls are young women, they will know that their daddy did what he could with what he had. And that's why it doesn't feel heavy.
So let's talk about the fine art world.
Mm.
You don't need validation, clearly, sat across from you. You don't. But you're about to sort of dip your toe in.
Dip my toe in, yeah. After choosing not to for 7 years, because everything happened too fast.
I'm guessing lots of people have picked up the phone and said, hey, Misan, come do a show.
There's been a lot of, from galleries, museums, and all of it felt, the feeling where you're like, this doesn't, and I want to keep working. I need a bigger body of work. The world is in flux. Who knew it would, every time I was like, oh, things are kind of crazy. It just kept going up a notch, crazier and crazier and crazier. But now, it's 5 years, since George Floyd was killed. Now's the time, and to do it with a family friend who owns one of the only black-owned galleries. Our fathers were friends. I mean, it's crazy. Both our late fathers were good friends.
And his father's story is...
legend, legend. And, a lot of people in Nigeria, to have Abiola and Harriman, both our families are known in Nigeria, doing this show is historic for many reasons. So the stars aligned. This is the right space. I feel safe with Aki. And this is the place where people can, for the first time, can walk through and see a broad church of my protest work in a way that the only other place you can see anything by me is in the National Portrait Gallery. And, this is a much broader observation of, so none of the celebrities, but a good chunk of the civil rights work for humans to bathe in.
You jokingly said it'll be 3,900 some odd photographs. But how are you possibly going to edit?
Well, I mean, we've gone down. I'm not doing any more. We've got the final edit down from about 12,000 images to just over 100, covering, oh my God, the Nigerian protests, the NSAS protests, Grenfell, Israel, Palestine, Black Lives Matter, the trans. It's all here. It's all here. It's 7 years of protests on 3 continents in this space. And I don't think that happens too much in London.
Yeah. It doesn't happen anywhere. And I want to talk about how Nigeria sort of sees you. But I want to get back to that because I think you know that people are going to come out and say, oh, okay, so now Misan's selling this work. He's making money off the back of it. Look at that. All along, we knew it.
All along. Well, I think the thing about people that have wanted to collect my work, I think I've been saying no for so long. You know, every type of person has approached to own, especially the protest work. And for me, it's more than having people have the option of owning my work. It's also to try. I'm probably the only person that can show that photography of this type should have a real market because it deserves to have a market. And we'll see what the universe makes of it. But if I can do that, it's going to help so many other image makers that are capturing we're living through historic times. And this shouldn't be just Instagram fodder. This is some of the most important art that's being created is the observation of our lives right now. So I'm taking that upon myself to do so. And as a Black photographer, a Black artist as well, it's important to show that there can be a circular economy that supports voices that are utterly unapologetically outspoken, because I will make other artists braver in recognizing that they can earn a living and support themselves and be truly radical storytellers, right to the tip of the spear of what needs to be observed and told. Otherwise, you know, blue chip artists are great, but if their work makes a whole bunch of rich white folk comfortable, then that's not the work, in my opinion. I don't want to be that. I don't need to be that if that's what it takes. I'll never reduce what I'm observing in order to fit into a system that needs it to be reduced. Just think about those words. That's never going to be me. But I believe there are enough people that love art and the protest of it. I mean, Nina Simone said it best. How can you be an artist if you don't reflect the times that we live in? Should I reduce the times that we live in to fit into a system for fiscal gain? Absolutely not. Let them buy nothing if this is too much for them. Simple as that.
And my hope is that with a show like this, we might inch our way back to proper patronage.
Yeah.
People who are buying the work because they believe in you.
Yeah.
They believe in the project, right? This bigger thing that you've got going on, because it is bigger than the photographs, right? South Bank, Save the Children, the documentary. There's a much bigger thing.
Also, the R word, resistance. Art is resistance.
It's not entertainment for me. It's like music. I don't listen to songs on the radio. I listen to songs that ripped my heart out and I watch it beat. So that's the version of artist that I am, right? And when I say resistance, I think there are lots of people of all levels of wealth that are realizing that this society that we live in needs a reset. And art has always been at the front of doing that, from the spoken word around, oral history around a campfire to images, right? So that's part of the work as well.
I had a question here. I think it's on the flip side about Dylan, because I was, for some reason, putting this together thinking about Bob Dylan and those songs that they were about making a movement.
Of course.
And for me, that's.
I mean, Bob had, when he did the song for Reuben Hurricane Carter, right? His rep people were not happy with the fact, but that was the fucking work. That's the work. So I'm following in the footsteps of people that have been fearless. And I think about Muhammad Ali a lot. And when he has, lost his best fighting years because he didn't want to go and shoot people that, didn't know who he was, and he didn't even know where they were on the map, right? And we're in this age of extreme wealth and oligarchy that is controlling so much of what our children may or may not inherit. And, we don't have the gazillions or run the social media platforms, but if you have the voice that you have, I mean, look at what you've done to the art world. You use your tool, I use mine, and we keep swimming upstream so we can one day look toward the horizon together. That's what it is.
Incidentally, I know every single word to Hurricane. Long song. Sounds never going to happen. What do you think you owe your subjects? So is the photo like the end of your responsibility?
No, I think it's my voice.
Because I think of all the 60, Gordon, I keep bringing up Gordon Parks. I think of, and Manita, I think of black photographers and how they were, unfortunately I wasn't alive to shoot Malcolm and Martin Luther King and be around at that time, but they weren't really given a voice. There wasn't social media. And I think a big part of what I am goes way beyond the image. It's how I try and articulate what I stand for. And, I'm reaching, 20 plus million people a month on social media. And many of them, when they come across me saying, "Oh, I've been looking for you. You're not trying to make me scared or angry. You're explaining things that I never understood through your images. And I'm now going to read a history book, a podcast, and go on a journey." So that voice that black photographers of yesteryear were never given, I'm taking it. And that's a baton that they gave me to force change through art. And that's a responsibility I have, not just for the subjects, but for the legacy of this art form and how it has been reduced for a reason. I mean, there's a reason protest photography is ignored and looked away from. It's not because it's not powerful. I dare say you give me a space, any space in the world, and I put 300 images up, and you find another art form, you put 300 images, then we get 100 people to walk through, and you won't even need to ask them, just look at their faces when they've seen the observation of humanity that I've been lucky enough to observe. You cannot defend yourself against the images of humanity in protest. You just cannot. I was in a protest just on Saturday, and there was a woman in a hijab. I did a video about it, and she had a newborn and I think 3-year-old that needed to do potty time. And as a parent, I got very stressed because I could see she was very stressed. She was by herself. She didn't have help, Muslim woman. And then I see this woman with short hair, had a big Queers for Palestine badge on. And she walks up to this Muslim woman, puts her hand out, and the woman looks, and the baby even reaches for her. And she holds this other person's child. And then the mother attends potty time. And I couldn't even take a picture. I'm just stood there watching this. And then she sorts her child out. The other lady gives the baby back. They have an embrace for the ages, try not to cry. And then the queer lady walks past me, and tears just falling down her eyes, because they know the connection they've just had. That's protest for you. It's a very best of humanity. And there is no world I know that should be unimportant. I just bear witness to it.
I mean, having like a minor heart attack They got nothing. I mean, fuck my notes. I don't know how anyone sits where I'm sat and doesn't think, like, this is the answer. This is what we need. We need more of this. We need to amplify you and like, I don't know, as someone who has been a fan for as long as I've been a fan, even when you were shooting nonsense, there was something that you were doing, that you were grabbing, that you got out of me and my husband. I mean, we never stand away. You made us stand, and it's the cutest picture, and it's in our house.
I was very nervous when I,
I really struggle with groups, and I was running around shooting because they made me calm, and I was trying to be charming and figuring things out. But just know that and I say this a lot because I want men and women that see me at this level to recognize that I'm just human. Before I did my big TED talk, which is a big moment for me, in the big TED stage in Canada, I did the talk, but I had, I was sat in the bathroom having a full-blown panic attack 5 minutes before I had to go on, to the building to do the talk. And I say this just so you don't think that I have all the answers. I don't. I'm a dad of 2 little girls that is loved by a woman with a huge heart that has all the scars of childhood trauma, that happens to hold a camera and tries to bear witness so we can do better than we have done. And that is what it is.
So we can do better. Okay, well, there you go. Kat, you're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Scene Podcast. If you liked what you heard, I'd love it if you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you want to connect with us between episodes, follow us on Instagram at WatchSceneArt. I'm Carrie Scott, and I'll see you next time. Get it?